And one thing too, I really want to focus on is you never want to restrict, baby's time at the breast. So while you're nursing on that one side, once they're finished, if they seem like they're still hungry, always offer that same breast that you nursed off of.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning into this episode of Mom Talks with Krista. I'm so excited because this episode is all about you guys. I asked you guys to send me your top breastfeeding questions, and I brought it to my interview with Brenna Lansden, who at the time was a breastfeeding counselor, but I'm actually happy to announce she passed her test and she is now an official lactation consultant. So I sent my congrats to Brenna. So I'm actually gonna split this up into 3 different parts because we had a lot of questions. It was an awesome interview, you guys. So here's part 1, and stay tuned and we'll have the next couple of parts in the next few weeks. Enjoy. Welcome to Mom Talks with Krista. I'm your host, Krista, and I'm really excited for today's guest. We have Brenna Lansden back, and she's a breastfeeding counselor, and she's going to talk all about your top breastfeeding questions. Our last video with her, she talked about your top breastfeeding concerns, and it was a very popular video. So this time we took it to our audience to ask what your top questions were. So welcome back, Brenna. We're happy to have you here.
Hey, Krista, I'm happy to be back.
I'm excited to now answer audience questions. Starting off, first question that we have is about weaning. So how to wean from breastfeeding.
The most important thing when it comes to weaning is you want to take it slow. That way you can avoid any issues that you may have, like clogged ducts or mastitis, because we definitely don't want mom running into that. So one thing I recommend to moms is to drop 1 feed per week, and you can repeat this. Another way is to don't offer, don't refuse. So with that type of weaning is a mom wouldn't offer her breast, but if the baby or the child seems interested in nursing, they wouldn't refuse the breast either. Another way to wean is to basically just kind of switch up the nursing routine. So say that you're used to nursing in the mornings and then you go out for a walk or something like that. So just try to mix it up a little bit so you can mix up the routine, and that is another way to wean. But the key point with weaning is you want to take it slow, because what can happen is some unnecessary things that we are trying to avoid with clogged ducts and mastitis.
So this next question says, I had low milk supply with my first baby. Will I have issues breastfeeding with the next baby?
A lot of the times, if the first time around you had issues with breastfeeding, if they weren't related to what's called insufficient glandular tissue, which basically means that you don't have enough milk making tissue in your breasts, or if you've had previous breast surgery, so if you've had a breast reduction, those are really the main reasons why a lot of moms struggle with milk supply. So if the first time around it wasn't due to either one of those, then a lot of the times moms who, are giving birth to their second, third, fourth baby really don't have a lot of issues. The best advice that I can give is, really educate yourself while you're still pregnant. What are normal behaviors for breastfeeding babies? What's normal, what's abnormal? That way you can be prepared. Also taking a breastfeeding class, whether it's, at your local hospital or online, following some people, on social media. It's a great way to get some information. And then really once baby gets here, doing a lot of skin to skin, making sure that you're offering the breast to baby often, and also finding your support system. So find a local lactation professional that can help you out once baby arrives, if any issues do come up the second, third time around.
This next one, I hear a lot in our Facebook group. I noticed a dip in my milk supply, especially before and during my period. Why is that?
A lot of moms notice a dip in their supply when it comes to menstruation or even ovulation. And so a lot of people think that it has to do with a dip in the blood calcium level. And so one way that you can combat that is to actually take a magnesium and calcium supplement. You don't want to take just a calcium supplement by itself. You want to use magnesium because they complement each other. Before you start anything, always check with your provider. But a lot of moms that take this magnesium calcium supplement, they'll take it a couple weeks before their period, or some moms, even if they're not tracking their period, or when they ovulate, we'll just take it the entire month. And that helps to reduce that dip in supply. Another thing you can do to combat that is to just add some more pumping or nursing sessions in. If you can anticipate that that is going to happen, then you can kind of be prepared and start, adding in an extra pump session or power pump session or nursing baby, more frequently before your period, because that dip's going to happen. But I think one of the most important things to know is that it's normal and it's just temporary. So try not to stress too much about that, because it is temporary and your supply will most likely rebound back after you've gone through that menstruation or ovulation period in your cycle.
Okay, so what tips do you have for a mom that has an oversupply of milk? This mom that asked the question said she's pretty uncomfortable. So what tips do you have for her?
An oversupply, some people think, oh my gosh, that's the greatest thing in the world. And actually an oversupply comes with its own not good side effects. So what we want to make sure is, if you do have an oversupply, that we're not trying to regulate that in the first 4 to 6 weeks, postpartum. That is when your body is regulating that milk production. So we don't want to mess with anything during those first 4 to 6 weeks, because we want to make sure that breast milk and breastfeeding is well established. So as long as it's after that 4 to 6 week period and baby is gaining weight appropriately and meeting their milestones, there are a couple ways that you can help reduce that oversupply. One way is to offer one breast per feed. It's called block feeding. I will say this, you do have to be kind of cautious with block feeding, because it's a very efficient way to reduce your milk supply. So this isn't like a permanent solution to something. I would say maybe if you're going to do block feeding, to try it for about a week, and hopefully within that time your body will self-regulate to reduce your milk supply a little bit. So what you would do with the block feeding is you would offer one breast at a time per feed. Now, if the unused breast does get uncomfortable before the next feeding, you can express a little bit, or you can use some cold compresses in between the feedings to help reduce any uncomfortable feeling that mom may have. And one thing too, I really want to focus on is you never want to restrict, baby's time at the breast. So while you're nursing on that one side, once they're finished, if they seem like they're still hungry, always offer that same breast that you nursed off of. So you never want to restrict any time from the breast. Another thing that you can do is there are some teas that you can take, no more milk tea, but I wouldn't recommend using those in this instance. I think the block feeding will really help moms help their body regulate their milk production. One thing you want to avoid is any additional breast stimulation. So be mindful when you're in the shower not to have that water running directly on your breasts, or just any type of breast or nipple stimulation. I wouldn't encourage pumping a lot. If you are uncomfortable, just pump a little bit, because we don't want to tell your body to make more milk just by pumping. So just be mindful of those things too.
And then speaking of pumping, so the next question is, how often do I need to clean and replace my pumping parts?
So pumping parts are very important to having a successful lactation journey. So it's really important to have proper maintenance with your pumping parts. A lot of the moms that I work with, they say, all of a sudden I'm not getting as much milk as I used to. And I'll say, when was the last time you changed your pumping parts? And they will say, well, never. You really need to pay attention to how often, you're changing your pumping parts, because it can be beneficial to you and your milk supply to stay on top of that maintenance. So what I would recommend, if you are, pumping at work often, or if you're an exclusive pumper especially, really follow these guidelines, is your duckbill valve. It may look like this. It may be more of a see-through clear thing. And then also the membrane, if your valve looks like this. So these are two parts, this white part right here, and then also this. You would need to change those monthly. Or sometimes if you notice that this doesn't shut all the way, then I would also recommend changing that. So if you do have good maintenance of these pump parts, you will have a more successful pumping relationship. As far as the phalanges only need replaced if there's damage. So if you've noticed that they're cracking, then you can change them. But if you buy them, sterilize them, and then you can just wash them, and they're, pretty good to go. As far as tubing, if you buy a new pump, you don't need to do anything with your tubing. However, if you buy or get a used pump, you would definitely want to switch out the tubing, because the tubing can be exposed to milk and condensation from the previous user, which we don't want.
Mm.
But if you're not having any issues with the tubing, if you don't hear any leaks coming from them, then you're good to go.
Okay.
So another pump part is the backflow protector. It may look like this. What you want to do with this to keep it in good working condition is you'll want to clean it. You don't need to clean it necessarily every day with soap and water. That would be ideal. But after each pump, this can get a buildup of condensation. And a lot of moms may not know that they need to let this air out. The best thing to do is to maybe keep some alcohol swabs or some alcohol in your pump bag. And you can actually, after you're finished pumping, wipe that off with the alcohol and then just let it air dry. But unless this has, if this has holes in it, or if you just notice if you've changed all your other pump parts and it's been a while since you've changed these, then I would recommend changing that. I think really paying attention to your milk output and the suction on your pump, just getting to know what's normal and what's not normal.
Thanks for watching part 1 of my interview of breastfeeding questions with Brenna Lansden. I hope you learned a lot from this episode. And if you do have more questions, feel free to send them my way. And we're going to do another series in the future, so she'll be able to answer those as well. And if you love this segment, let us know, comment below, tell us what you loved about it. And part 2 and 3 are going to be coming up very soon. It's going to be March 25th and April 15th. So stay tuned for those. And thanks again for tuning in, guys. Have a great week.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Mom Talks with Krista. If you're not yet subscribed, go ahead and click on the subscribe button. It should be down here somewhere. We release new episodes every single Wednesday. And if you're not following us yet, be sure to follow us at Mommy Knows Best on Instagram. And remember, if you're watching this and doubting yourself, you are a great mom. So thanks so much for watching, and we will see you next week.